He was not much surprised by the sour whiff that spilled wine that greeted him as he approached the door, but it was just more proof of what he and Laurie already knew. The changes were winding themselves quietly all through the house. He opened the door, and although what he saw frightened him, it didn't much surprise him. Metal constructions had burst through two of the wine cellar walls, tearing apart the racks with their diamond-shaped compartments, and pushing the bottles onto the floor where they had broken. Like the cables in the attic crawl space, whatever was forming here, growing, to use Laurie's word, hadn't finished yet. It spun itself into being in the sheens of light that hurt Trent's eyes. It made him feel a little sick to his stomach. No cables here, however, and no curved struts. What was growing in his real father's forgotten wine cellar looked like cabinets and consoles of instrument panels. And as he looked, vague shapes humped themselves up in the metal like the heads of excited snakes. Gaining focus became dials and levers and readouts. There were also a few blinking lights. Some of these actually began to blink as he looked at them. A low sighing sound accompanied this act of creation. Trent took one cautious step farther into the little room, especially bright red light, or a series of them, that caught his eye. The lights were numbers. They were under a glass strip in the middle construct that was spinning its weight out of a console. This new thing looked like some sort of chair, although no one was sitting in it. It would have been very uncomfortable. It would have been very comfortable. At least no one with a human shape, Trent thought from the shape. The glass strip was in one of the arms of his twisted chair, if it was a chair. And the numbers had perhaps caught his eye because they were changing. 72, 34, 18 became 72, 34, 17, and then 72, 34, 16. Trent looked at his watch, which had a second sweep hand, and it was used to confirm it, what his eyes had already told him. The chair might or might not really be a chair, but the numbers on the glass strip were a digital clock. It was running backwards, counting down to be perfectly accurate. What would happen when that readout finally reached 000001 to 000000? Some 3 days from this very afternoon. He was pretty sure he knew, and every kid knows that one or two things happen when a backwards running clock finally reaches zero across a board. An explosion. Or a liftoff. Trent thought there was too much equipment, too many gadgets for it to be an explosion. He felt something had gone into the house where they were in England. Some sort of spore, perhaps, that had drifted through space for a billion years before being caught into a gravitational pull of Earth, spiraling down to an atmosphere like a bit of milkweed fluff caught in a mild breeze, and finally falling into the chimney of a house in Titusville, Indiana. Into the Bradbury's house in Titusville, Indiana. It might have been something else entirely, of course, but the spore idea felt right to Trent. And although he was the oldest of the Bradbury kids, he's still young enough to believe completely in his own perceptions and intuitions. And in the end, it didn't really matter, did it? What mattered was what happened. Of course, what was going to happen. When Trent left the wine cellar this time, he not only snapped the padlock's arm closed, but took the key as well. Something terrible happened at Lou's faculty party. It happened at 8:45, only 45 minutes or so after the first guests had arrived. "What's the matter with you?" Trent and Laurie heard him yelling at her. And when Trent felt Laurie's hand creep into his like a small cold mouse, he held it tightly. "Don't you know what people are going to say about this? Don't you know how people in the department talk? I mean, really, Catherine." Their mother's only reply was soft, helpless sobbing, And just for one moment, Trent felt a horrible, unwilling burst of hate for her. Why had she married him in the first place? What, didn't she deserve this for being such a fool? Ashamed of himself, he pushed the thought away, made it gone, and turned to Laurie. Great party, huh? She whispered to him, tears pouring down her cheeks. Right sprat, he said, and hugged her so she could cry against his shoulder without being heard. It'll make my top 10 list at the end of the year, no sweat. It seems her mother had been lying to everyone. She had been in the grip of the screaming blue migraine for not just a day or 2 days, but this time for the last 2 weeks. During that time, she had eaten next to nothing and lost 15 pounds. She had been serving canopies to Stephen Crunchmer, the head of the history department. And when his wife went out, the powers went out of everything in the world, suddenly swam away from her. She rolled bonelessly forward, spilling a whole tray of Chinese pork rolls onto the front of Mrs. Crunchmer's expensive dress. Brian and Lissa had heard the commotion and came creeping down the stairs in their pajamas to see what was going on, although all four children had been strictly forbidden by Daddy Lou to leave the upper floors of the house once the party began. When they saw their mother on the floor in a circle of kneeling, concerned faculty members, they had forgotten their stepfather's front order and run in, Lissa crying, Brian bellowing in excited dismay. Mom, Mommy, Brian cried, shaking her. Mommy, wake up. Mrs. Evans stirred and moaned. Get upstairs, Lou said coldly. Both of you. When they showed no signs of obeying, Lou put his hand on Lissa's shoulder and tried to tighten it until she switched with pain. I'll take care of this, he said, through teeth so tightly clamped they refused to entirely unlock, even to speak. You and your brother go upstairs right now. Take your hand off her, Trent said clearly. Lou turned toward the archway between the living room and the hallway. Trent and Laurie stood there, side by side. Trent was as pale as his father, but his face was calm and set. Once you go upstairs, Lou said, all four of you, there's nothing here to concern you, nothing to concern you at all. Get your hand off Alyssa, Trent said. Get away from her mother, Laurie said. And now Mrs. Evans was sitting up, her hands to her head, looking around dazedly. The headache had popped like a balloon, leaving her disoriented and weak, but finally out of the agony she had endured for the last 14 days. She knew something she had done something terrible, embarrassed Lou, perhaps even disgraced him, but for the moment she was too graceful for the pain and stopped the care. The shame would come later. Now she only wanted to go upstairs very slowly and lie down. You'll be punished for this, Lou said, looking at his four stepchildren in the nearly perfect shocked silence of the living room. I'm sorry for the misbehavior, said to the room at large. My wife was a bit lax with them, I'm afraid. What they need is a good English nanny. Don't be an idiot, Lou, Mrs. Crunchmer said. Your wife fainted. They were concerned, that's all. Children should care about their mother, and husband about his wife. Trent and Laurie assisted their mother up the stairs and listened and Brian trailed along behind. The party went on. The incident was more or less papered over, as unpleasant incidents at parties usually are. Mrs. Evans was asleep almost as soon as her head touched the pillow when the children heard Lou downstairs enjoying the party without her. He never once broke away to come up and check on her. After the last guest had been shown out, he walked heavily upstairs and poked his head into the trench room and measured the children with his gaze. I knew you'd all be in here, he said with a satisfied little nod. Conspiring. You're going to be punished, you know. Yes, indeed. Tomorrow. Tonight, I want you to go right back to bed and think about it. Now go to your rooms. And no creeping around either. Neither did Listen or Brian did any quote-unquote creeping around. Certainly, they were too exhausted to do anything and fall asleep immediately. Laura came back down to Trent's room in spite of Lou, and the two of them listened in silent dismay at their stepfather upbraided their mother for daring to sing at his party. And as their mother wept and offered not a word of argument or even demurral. "Oh, Trent, what are we going to do?" Laura asked. Trent's face was extraordinarily pale and still. "Do?" he said. "Well, why, we're not going to do anything, Sprat." "We have to, Trent, we have to. We have to help her." "No, we don't," Trent said. "This house is going to do it for us." He looked at his watch and calculated. "At around 3:34 tomorrow afternoon, the house is going to do it all." There were no punishments in the morning. Lou Evans told them he would see them in his study that night, one by one, and beat a fair strokes each. A few strokes to each, and left for work. The two younger kids was standing by the kitchen. Melissa was crying. Brian was keeping a stiff upper lip, but he was pale and there were purple pouches under his eyes. "He'll spank us," Brian said to Trent, "and he spanks hard too." "Nope," Trent said. "But Trent," Melissa began. "Listen to me," Trent said, "and listen carefully, and don't you miss a single word. It's important, and none of you can screw this up." They stared at him silently with the big blue eyes, green blue eyes. "As soon as school is out, I want you two to come right home, but only as far as the corner of Maple and Walnut. Have you got that?" "Yes," Melissa said hesitantly. "But why, Trent?" "Never mind," Trent said. His eyes were sparkling dangerously. "Just be there. Stand by the mailbox. You have to be there by 3 o'clock. 3:15 at the latest. Do you understand?" "Yes," Ryan said, speaking for both of them. "We got it. Laura and I will already be there, or we'll be there right after you get there." "How are we going to do that, Trent?" Laura asked. "We don't even have to get out of school until 3 o'clock. I have band practice, and the bus takes..." "We're not going to school today," Trent said. "No?" Laura was nonplussed. Melissa was horrified. "Trent, you can't do that. That's hooky." "And about time, too," Trent said grimly. "Now you two get ready for school, and just remember the corner of Maple and Walnut at 3 o'clock. 3:15 at the absolute latest. And whatever you do, don't come all the way home." He stared at Brian and Melissa fiercely. Even Laurie was frightened. "Wait for us. Don't you dare come back into this house," he said. "Not for anything." When the little kids were gone, Laurie seized his shirt and demanded to know what was going on. "It has something to do with what's going on in this house. I know it does. And if you want me to play hooky and help you, you better tell me what it is." "Chill out, I'll tell you," Trent said. "And be quiet. I don't want you to wake up Mom. She'll make us go to school, and that's no good." "Well, what is it? Tell me." "Come downstairs," Trent said. "I want to show you something." He led her downstairs into the wine cellar. Trent wasn't completely sure Laurie would ride along for what he had in mind. It seemed awfully, well, final, even to him. But she did. If it had just been a matter of enduring a spanker from quote-unquote Daddy Lou, he didn't think she would have, but Laurie had been deeply affected by the sight of her mother lying senseless on the living room floor as Trent had been by his stepfather's unfeeling reaction to it. "Yeah," Laurie said bleakly. "I think we have to." She was looking at the blinking numbers on the arm of the chair. They now read 07-49-21. The wine cellar was no longer a wine cellar at all. It stank of wine, true enough, and there were piles of green shattered glass on the floor. But it now looked like a madman's version of the control ship on the Starship Enterprise. Dials whirled. Digital readouts flickered, changed, flickered again. Lights blinked and flashed. "If we don't do something, it'll kill her," Laura said in a slow voice. She was looking at the numbers, red numbers on the countdown. "Not on purpose," she said. "He might even be sad for a while, anyway. Because I think he does love her, sort of, and she loves him, sort of. But he'll make her worse and worse. She'll get sick all the time. And then one day, she broke off looking at him, and there was something in her face that scared Trent more than anything in her strange, sneaking house had been able to do. Tell me, Trent, she said. Her hand grasped his arm. It was very cold. Tell me how we're going to do it. They went up to Lou's study together and found the key in the top drawer, tucked neatly into an envelope with the word study printed on it. They left the house together to sit to the shower on the second floor when one, meaning their mom was up. They spent the day in the park, although neither of them spoke it. It was the longest day either of them had ever lived through. Twice they saw the beat cop and hid in the public toilets till it was gone. This was no time to be caught playing truant and bumming off to school. At 2:30, they walked to the phone booth on the east side of the park. Do I have to? Laurie asked. I have to scare her, but especially after last night. Do you want her in the house when whatever happens? Trent asked. Laurie dropped a quarter in the telephone with no further protest. It rang so many times it became sure that their mother had gone out. That might be good, but that might also be bad. It was certainly worrisome. If she was out, it was entirely possible that she might come back before. Trent, I don't think she's... Hello? Mrs. Evans said in a sleepy voice. Oh, hi, Mom, Laurie said. I didn't think you were there. I went back to bed, she said with an embarrassed little laugh. I can't seem to get enough sleep all of a sudden. I'm supposed to... If I'm asleep, I can't think about how horrible I was last night. Oh, Mom, you weren't horrible. When a person faints, it isn't because they want to. Laurie, why are you calling? Is everything okay? Sure, Mom. Well, Trent poked her in the ribs hard. Laurie, who had been slumping, straightened up in a hurry. I hurt myself in gym. You know, just a little. It's not bad. What'd you do? You're not calling from the hospital, are you? Gosh, no, Laurie said hastily. Just a sprained knee. Mrs. Kidd asked if he could come and bring me home early. I don't know if I can walk on it. It really hurts. I'll come right away. Try not to move it at all, honey. Don't worry, Mom. I'll be careful. Will you be in the nurse's office? I'll be right there. Thanks, Mom. Bye. She hung up and looked at Trent. She drew in a deep breath and let out a long, trembly sigh. That was fine, she said in a voice close to tears. He held her tight. You did great, he said. I wonder if she'll ever believe me again, Laurie asked bitterly. She will, Trent said. Come on. They went over to the west side of the park where they could watch the Walnut Street. The day had turned cold and dim. Thunderheads were forming overhead and a chilly wind was blowing. They had waited for 5 endless minutes when their mother's car passed them, heading rapidly toward Greendown Middle School. Laurie had Trent's hand and was pulling him back to the telephone booth again. You get to call Lou. He put in another quarter and punched the number of the history department office. He glanced at his watch. 2:45. Less than an hour to go. Thunder rumbled faintly in the west. History department, woman's voice said. Hi, this is Trent Bradbury. I need to speak with my stepfather, Lewis Evans, please. Professor Evans is in class, the secretary said, but he'll be at it. I know. He's got modern British history till 3:30. But you better get him just the same. It's an emergency. It concerns his wife. Then he added, my mom. There was a long pause, and Trent felt a movement of faint alarm. It was as if she was thinking of refusing or dismissing him. Emergency or no emergency, but that was most definitely not in the plan. He's in Oglethorpe, right next door, she said, finally. I'll get him myself. I'll have him call as soon as... No, I have to hold on. But, please, will you just stop messing with me and go get him? He asked, allowing a ragged, hairy note in his voice. It wasn't hard. All right, the secretary said, if you could tell me the nature. No, Trent said. Well, Laurie asked, I'm on hold if they're getting him. What if he doesn't come? Trent shrugged. Then we're sunk. But he'll come. You wait and see. We left it until awful late. Trent nodded. They had left it until awful late. Why doesn't he answer the darn phone? Laurie asked, looking at her watch. He will, Trent said, and her stepfather did. Hello? It's Trent, Lou. Mom's in your study. Her headache must have come back because she fainted. I can't wake her up. You better come home right away. Trent was not surprised at his stepfather's first stated object of concern. My study, my study! What the hell was she doing in there? In spite of his anger, Trent's voice came out calmly. Cleaning, I think. And then tossed the ultimate bait to a man who cared a great deal more for her work than his wife. There are papers all over the floor.